Welcome to the Aaron Harber Show, Your Decision 2018. This is part 2 of our special two-part series with Brian Watson, the Republican nominee for State Treasurer, and Dave Young, the Democratic nominee for State Treasurer. Brian, again, great having you on the show.
Thanks for having me back.
My pleasure. Dave, always a pleasure to have you here.
Same back at you, Aaron. Happy to be here.
Well, great. So one of the things I want, I'm delighted that you're both here. We're, of course, pleased as a show to have you two. This is your first appearance together. Is that correct?
Yes.
So.
We met briefly in a restaurant, but first time together.
All right. So we're honored to have the first official campaign, well, we'll call it conversation. This isn't really a debate. But in the last show, I'd asked, Dave, I'd asked Brian about what Walker Stapleton, the incumbent state treasurer, had done well. So I want to ask you, what has Walker done well? And then I'm going to ask each of you, what has he done poorly? So start us off.
Well, I would agree that he raised the issue of para. It was certainly something that needed attention, and I'm not enamored with the way he raised the awareness of that. I think it was contentious, but the fact that we needed to draw attention to it was important. Okay, and what has he done that you're not pleased with, or that you think he's done poorly? Well, I think that the problem solving that ensued as a result of raising everybody's attention was lacking. And what we need in the office is somebody who's a problem solver. In my time on the Joint Budget Committee, I've shown that I can work in a bipartisan way. 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats on that Joint Budget Committee, and we work very well together to problem solve every day. And I think that's the kind of talent we need to bring to the Joint Budget Committee, to the Treasurer's Office in order to solve big issues like para. All right, and the Joint Budget Committee, of course, is not only bipartisan, but you are charged with really a constitutional obligation to provide the General Assembly with a balanced budget every year. Exactly right. And the General Assembly always does that. Well, in the last 50 years we have with the Joint Budget Committee setup, you bet. Well, sometimes with a little chicanery maybe, but anyway, bottom line, the budget's been balanced. Brian, tell me, what do you think Walker has done poorly?
Well, again, he's done a great job in serving in the role overall. And, he has tried to bring it to the forefront, and with that has come a lot of contention. If you look at my career, everything I've ever done is about building bridges and tearing down barriers among people. When I was with the State Treasurer's staff just a few weeks ago, getting to know them, it's about a 30-person staff, I asked them, has anyone ever actually gone out as the State Treasurer and tried to meet with each board member and get to build a relationship with them? And they said, no, not in their knowledge. And so that's something that would be different for me and my administration. I would go in, meet with them, I'd build bridges, whether they're a D or U, or if they don't even know what they are. What I really care about is, how are we going to move this forward and create a positive impact?
One of the really, I think, bigger issues that has come to light in the last couple of years with the Treasurer's Office is the Great Colorado Payback. And the State Treasurer is responsible for that program, which returns unclaimed property to individuals and other entities, including municipalities. So the idea is that after a certain point in time, in certain accounts or in certain arrangements, if money is not claimed by a person or by an entity, it actually ultimately can revert to the state's care. And over a period of time, if it's not claimed, the state gets the money, but the state has made a conscientious effort in the past to return that money to the rightful owner. What we found is that in the last several years, the program has not worked well. And I don't know if it's necessarily, I think there's no question it has worked poorly. I don't think that's necessarily a new thing. I think that's been going on for years under a number of different treasurers. But what we found out is there have been thousands of complaints over several years. People have a difficult time reaching the office. People who think and are told you're going to get your money back in a matter of weeks or a couple of months. Sometimes it takes a year or more to get things back. And the bureaucracy of going through the process of making a claim can be sometimes absolutely ludicrous. It's one thing if you have trouble, the office claims, well, we're not sure if Aaron Harber is Aaron Harber, but to say we're not sure if the city of Lakewood is the city of Lakewood strikes me as ridiculous. Talk to me about these problems and what you're going to do, Brian.
Well, a lot of people think the Treasurer's office is just a stuffy office job. It's about numbers and everything. But the Unclaimed Property Fund, I think, is one of the most exciting parts of it. I told you I was just with their staff. So if you don't pay on your safety deposit box, it goes to the State Treasurer's office. They open it up and they look through, and there's baseball cards and coins and all kinds of interesting things. And it's fascinating what the state has.
Not my safety deposit box.
Well, I don't know. We have to go check. That's the point of the Great Colorado Give Back. But the interesting thing is there's over $1.3 billion of the people's money and assets with the state. And unfortunately,
in unclaimed property.
Unclaimed property, just $1.3 billion, and it's everything from gold coins and all kinds of assets. The interesting thing is, and sad thing, is that Representative Young and his colleagues have already gone in and claimed over $500 million of the $1.3 billion of the people's money for other programs and things that they want to grow government. Because they say, you know what, Aaron, you're probably not going to claim your asset after a particular time period, so we'll just take it over here because we need money for the ever-growing government. And so a huge difference for me in being state treasurer is a couple things. One, I'm going to go in and run that office just like I would run my business, and they say, you know what, who's our customer? Our customer is the people of Colorado, and those assets are the people's assets, not the state assets. So we need a treasurer who's going to be responsive to streamline the process, figure out the rightful owner, cut the red tape, and get it back to the people. And only an outsider's perspective who started a company from nothing and built it up to over $1.3 billion of assets around the country can truly bring that perspective. But I also want to make it fun. It's almost like going in and saying, where are these assets? And say, let's figure out where they are, let's get them back to the people, and make it an enjoyable process, not something that the state is saying, you know what, we're going to be problematic for you, the people.
Dave, what's your take?
Well,
and you're welcome to respond to the criticism.
Yeah, this is serious business. I mean, you can talk about fun, but this is actually people's property, and you want to be sure that it gets to the rightful owner. You don't want to have a system that's so streamlined that, in fact, Aaron Harber's property that somehow ended up in the treasurer's office goes to somebody else instead of back to you. I think that the office should be proactive in making sure that if there's someone's property there, that they are seeking out that person and alerting them, not just necessarily an ad in the newspaper or on TV, but actually actively saying, hey, your property is there. And
yeah, I'm pretty easy to find.
Yeah. You are, and I think that...
But it took me the better part of a year to get my unclaimed property.
That shouldn't happen. I mean, if you can actually prove who you are and establish your identity and they can connect the property to you, it should come back quickly. And I do think that there's some changes that are being made. They're starting to implement a good technology system to actually improve that process, but there's still a lot more work that needs to be done.
And what kind of oversight? What kind of oversight does the General Assembly have? Because I'll be critical of Walker. He's had 7 years to fix this problem, and it hasn't been fixed. This problem, in my understanding, existed before he took office, and yet very little seems to have been done to fix the problem. Why hasn't the General Assembly jumped in earlier?
Well, and
also address Brian's point about you guys grabbing $500 million. I want to hear about that.
Yeah. Well, so one thing I wanted to add, because you brought up the city of Lakewood, I've heard that counties actually have a property that is county property sitting in the Unclaimed Property Trust Fund, and they're having to go through a lot of bureaucracy to actually prove that they're the county. Why are we doing that? I mean, this is just silly. We need to actually, in those cases, make sure that it gets back. This is all taxpayer money, and it needs to get back to the county, municipality. That should be an easy solution. I think over time there's been learning. Actually, there is a national organization of Unclaimed Property Trust Fund administrators that they brought in actually to help them have a better understanding of what kind of reserve that they need to maintain, so that over the experience of the fund over many, many years, they know that they have enough in reserve to pay back those that come forward in order to be able to meet their claims when they call for them.
So you think
if somebody's been around, if something has been in the Unclaimed Property Trust Fund for many, many, many years and no one has claimed it, there's a very, very small probability that in fact somebody's going to come and step forward and ask for that.
So two things. So number one, you think that the $500 million extraction from the $1.3 billion, number one, is reasonable, and number two, is there any what would happen if, for example, people came back and made claims higher than that projection? Would there be funds there to provide it, or would the General Assembly have to appropriate funds to provide it?
I think that there's some there's a calculation that can be done there. This is a math problem that can be figured out. In fact, if the Treasurer's Office is more proactive in seeking people out, that may actually happen. More people may actually be coming forward and claiming it. If you actually streamline the process and people don't give up midstream because it's too onerous in order to complete it, in fact, we may see a higher rate of claim.
So if you have that higher rate of claim, could there ever be, in theory, a situation where the General Assembly would have to appropriate funds?
Potentially, but I think that there's enough work that's been done, and I've met Senator Lundberg and I have sat down as members of the Joint Budget Committee and actually sat down with staff from the Unclaimed Property Trust Fund and the Treasurer's Controller to make sure that they actually have safeguards in place and a system to make sure that there's enough reserve there to keep the fund viable.
All right. Brian, last word on this, and then we have to take a break.
Again, it's a fundamental distinction between us. I believe that it's the people's money, and a state treasurer should be doing everything they can to get the assets back to the people, to their rightful owners. Government always thinks it's their money. They always want to grow, and they're always trying to get their hands on money. We have to put a stop to some of that.
All right. We're going to take a break. We will be back with Dave and Brian in just a moment.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbortv.com.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today.
Join me and watch The Aaron Harber Show.
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 I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch The Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbortv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbortv.com.
Welcome back to the show. Remember, this is part 2 of our special 2-part series with Brian Watson and Dave Young, who are seeking your support to be Colorado's next treasurer. So a former state treasurer spoke to me about the office and said that one of the issues which was really important is the management of funds. I think most citizens don't realize what the office does in terms of managing funds, especially the short-term nature of that you're not making investments in 30-year projections for stocks and bonds and things like that. So what I'd like to ask you is talk about for the voters, what your experience has been in managing large sums of money. I'd like each of you to talk about that and about the amount of money the Treasurer's Office does manage and kind of the restrictions on that. So Dave, take a shot at that.
Right. So at any given time, there's about $6.5 or $7 billion in short-term revenue flow that comes through the Treasurer's Office. I had mentioned earlier I've been a member of the Joint Budget Committee. Current budget is about $30 billion, and so as revenue comes in based on the way the budget is constructed, and of course Appropriations Committee, of which I was the chair, actually approves the funding of those. The money flows in. It has to be safely invested. We want to be sure that the money is not lost. It has to be liquid. We have to make sure that when the check comes due, that you can actually write the check and the check won't bounce. And it has to be transparent. It has to be yield but actually the yield is the least important of all of those, because there are constrictions on what the treasurer can actually invest in. And so if you are going for yield and you end up endangering the safety or the liquidity of the funds, then you've run into trouble and you haven't really fulfilled your obligation as a treasurer.
So what are some of those restrictions so that people know?
Right. Well, you don't want to invest in any risky investment that actually has the potential to fail. So we look at really short-term kinds of cash-based instruments that we're investing in. We don't actually try to have a real long yield, which might result in a better, a longer term instrument that would result in a better yield, because if you've got it locked up and you have to get to it and pay a fine for getting out of your investment, you've lost money that the taxpayers are counting on being there.
All right, Brian, give me kind of your experience in managing money and actually managing money. And kind of your take on how you can function within the restrictions on the office and what it can do. And talk about those restrictions too, if you'd like.
So again, the office is first and foremost about stewardship and being conservative with the people's money, and to always remember who the money is for. It's for the people. And in terms of my personal experience, again, I grew up from humble means and started my company. And I've been investing capital for over 25 years. In fact, during the down economy, when I believe my opponent was still a school teacher, which again, thank you for his service with regards to that, I was in the trenches. And it's one thing to talk about a down economy, it's another thing to try to get through it, especially as someone who invests. And so every single real estate deal that I do, I bring in outside investors who co-invest alongside of me. And when that happens, it creates what is called a fiduciary responsibility, meaning that I'm responsible for their capital, one, to protect it, and two, to try to get a return on that money within risk-adjusted means. And we've had very strong returns as a company over the years. And so you think about the treasurer's office, it is really a fiduciary role to the people of Colorado, and to make sure that those assets are conservatively handled, that there's good stewardship, and that you're getting those risk-adjusted returns on that short-term money.
So for each of you, Dave, I'll start with you. What kind of return has that office gotten in the last, or certainly under Walker Stapleton's tenure for the 7 years? What's the rate of return on that $6 billion? So, and just so people understand, that's not always the same $6 billion. That's money coming in and out. But on average, there's $6 billion at any time. And you've both made it clear that it has to be invested in short-term instruments, 30, 60, 90 days or whatever. You can't go out and buy 10-year instruments. But I will ask you maybe as a follow-up, why can't you stagger some of those and have 1-year instruments or 2-year instruments? Is that viable? But let's start off with, what kind of return has that office gotten on average for the past 7 years during Walker Stapleton's tenure?
You know, I haven't actually gone all the way back to the very beginning, but I was recently looking at the current numbers, and it's been between 1.1 and 1.3%. That will vary somewhat over time, but it's not going to vary much, because we know that since the Great Recession, interest rates have been suppressed, and there hasn't been a lot of return. The Fed is starting to relax that a little bit. Interest rates are coming up, so that may improve a little bit. But again, you don't want to speculate on that, because the number one role of the treasurer in this treasury pool is to ensure that, in fact, that money is safe and it's liquid when the bill comes due.
So does it make sense? Does it make sense, Dave, to look at maybe a slightly longer-term picture where you stagger investments, so you always have money coming in? In other words, that by staggering them, you can go out further, knowing that maturity dates are coming in every 90 days anyway. Have you thought about that at all, or not?
Yeah, I think that's actually something. If you actually go and dig into the treasurer's office treasury pool a little deeper, you'll see that they have different portfolio profiles that they're actually pursuing. And some of those very short-term 10, 20, 30-day types of instruments, but they also have another longer-term investment strategy for part of that money that offers that opportunity. But again, you know, you don't want to have it locked up or else you run into some problems with liquidity.
All right. Brian, what's your take? And was that number, that 1 to 1.3% return, does that resonate with?
Yeah, it's in that range. But again, one of the primary jobs of the state treasurer is when the state needs to write a check, which in the state's language is called a warrant, you have to be able to write that check and you have to make sure you have the funds that can back up that check. And so, yes, there's risk-adjusted means. Yes, you can stagger some of those investments. But if the money is needed, it needs to be ready. And so that's why the short-term investment vehicles are used.
Okay, we're going to take our last break. We will be back with Dave and Brian in just a moment to wrap up.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbortv.com.
The Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award recognizes an individual who, through leadership, skill, and dedication, is advancing the broadcast industry in our state and our nation. Tonight, we honor Aaron Harber. Aaron has worked extensively in the media as a host, producer, political and economic commentator, and columnist. Today, the Aaron Harber Show is the focus of his media involvement. Aaron, it is a privilege to present you with the Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Just make journalism great again. I'm Aaron Harber, host of the Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today. I'm Aaron Harber, host of the Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbortv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching. I'm Aaron Harber, host of the Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
Join me and watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
Watch the Aaron Harber Show.
I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch the Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbortv.com.
Welcome back to the show. Remember, this is part 2 of our special 2-part series with Dave Young and Brian Watson, seeking your support to be Colorado's next state treasurer. So, Dave, I'd like you to talk about, and Brian as well, but start with you, transparency in the office. What are the challenges that you see today? What would you do differently?
You know, I think when Cary Kennedy was treasurer back 2006 through 2010, she began some initiatives that I think were laudable. She started a transparency report that was posted on the treasurer's website. There was a transparency online project that actually opened up and made the budget more transparent as well. And some of those things have suffered over the past 8 years. This is something that I think, as treasurer, I want to pick up and continue to move forward. The website that the treasurer runs is not very accessible. It's not very transparent. I actually, in another lifetime, worked in the web services industry. My job was actually to create very usable and transparent websites through the work that I did. And so I think I can bring that expertise to the treasurer's office and have the expertise to design a website that's very transparent. You know, at the end of the day, this is the people's money. This is taxpayer money, and people have a right to know how their money is being invested. They have a right to know how it's being spent. Frankly, I think the efforts on the Joint Budget Committee the past several years, including some work that Senator Kent Lambert has done to make the budget process more transparent, could be folded into that work in the Treasurer's office as well, so that people actually can go and very quickly find out exactly what's happening with their taxpayer money and how it's being invested, and make sure that they're getting a return on their investment that they're proud of.
All right, Brian, what do you think the challenges are in terms of transparency in the office? How do we increase it, and what does it actually mean?
Yeah. So again, our campaign is all about good stewardship. And for me, it's a three-legged stool. It's about transparency, it's about accountability, and it's about efficiency. So I've always been an entrepreneur and a CEO making decisions. So I'm going to bring that mindset, that outsider's mindset, that business mindset into the State Treasurer's office. And every single day, I ask at my company, how do we become better, smarter, and faster? And that same mindset will be in the State Treasurer's office, all focused on the people of Colorado. And so, yes, the Treasurer's office has done some good things, but when I hear things during my campaign, I've received many phone calls from the Unclaimed Property Fund saying I've been waiting over a year for $1,000 or whatever it might be. That's unacceptable. You either should get a yes or a no. As we said, go through it. Are you the person? Are you owed this money? Whatever. Let's get the money back into your hands, or the asset back into your hands, because it's your asset, it's not the state's. Not hearing a delayed no. And I think government's mindset is always just kick the can down the road, and you know what, I'm just in here and collecting my paycheck and I'll go on to the next office or whatever it might be. I have no desire to be a politician. A politician is interested in their own skin and the next election. I want to be a statesman, someone who's going to have a spine to actually do something and make a positive impact. And if that means I only serve one term, so be it. But I always want to serve the people of Colorado.
All right, well, I want to thank both of you for joining me. I wanted to give you each a little time to tell the voters why each of you should be the next state treasurer. Dave, tell us why, if I'm voting, well, actually I do get to vote. Why should I vote?
You do get to vote, Aaron.
And I vote early and often, but that's another issue. That's
that is another issue.
That's the Secretary of State's show and the Attorney General's show. But anyway, tell me why I should support Dave Young for State Treasurer.
I've been a public servant all of my career. I served as a teacher, taught K-12, junior high math, science, and technology for almost 25 years. I taught at the CU Denver downtown Denver campus in a master's program. So I have a long history as an educator. I also worked in the private sector, high tech, so I think I have that experience as well. My experience serving the people of Colorado on the Joint Budget Committee has been unique because, you know, you come from a House district, but in fact you serve everybody in the state. And I think my track record on the Joint Budget Committee shows that I can work across the aisle, that I always keep the focus on the people of Colorado and make sure that we are efficiently and effectively spending their tax money on things that they absolutely need to have in a way that actually results in good outcomes for them.
All right. Brian, tell me why I should vote for Brian Watson for State Treasurer.
Well, first, I encourage every single person, regardless of your political affiliation, do a job interview. This is a job, and decide who is the best to be able to serve in that office. My opponent, as he said, has been a school teacher and had been a politician. I've been in the trenches, come from humble means, and have been a creator, a job creator, been investing a long time, etc. We're also very different people in how we look at the role of government. He has stated that he wants to remove Tabor very clearly on his website. That allows government to spend out of control. I believe government should be constrained, and I believe we should go to the people to give them choice on what they want to spend money on. He's a proponent of Amendment 93, which would double your state income taxes. I disagree. I think we need to try to keep taxes and keep money in people's pockets. So again, we just come from a different mindset. So I encourage people, go out, do the job interview, and decide who you believe will be the best in that office, and I hope to earn your vote.
All right. Well, I want to thank both of you for being on the show, and I'm especially pleased that voters will get to see the two of you in this unrehearsed setting. I want to encourage everyone, of course, to go to our website. You can see all of our election shows. And just go to harbortv.com. You can also go to harbortv.com/YD for your decision. So make sure you watch part 1 of this special 2-part series as well. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Please contact us. We want to hear from you. And thanks for watching.